Clicks in there. Okay. Hi. All right. So this presentation is called Stay Weird, and I get to why. All right. So imagine growing up and you have to explain to every prospective boss, every friend, every person you meet why you disappear for 2 weeks of the year. It's taken me just about 38 years to actually try and explain what is CVID in a way that people understand. So I explain it as if you imagine my body, that my immune system is in fact like a bunch of super soldiers who are asleep on the job, who actually can't defend and figure out the difference between a houseplant and a virus. That's the best I could come up with. You see, my body always growing up was never particularly great at identifying what is something I should go out and fight, and therefore I ended up with CVID. I always had it. I've had it since I was very young, and I do understand that a lot of different people get diagnosed at different ages, but this was always my normal. So I got a little bit creative with some of this stuff because as I grew up, I would spend an awful lot of time by myself. I was frequently out of school, and I eventually had to figure out, okay, how do I take this rare disease and make it my strength? Because at the end of the day, when you have something like CVID that makes you feel just a little bit weird sometimes, I eventually learned to harness that into my superpower. All right, so if you could really imagine what my childhood was like going to school, this is basically how I imagine my attendance record, like Swiss cheese full of holes. And the thing is, when you're a child, kids are cruel. And when I was growing up, you would often, I was bullied a lot in school. And it was because I was the weird kid. Why was I always sick? Why was I always missing time? I didn't understand it either. I grew up in a town of less than 1,000 people. There were so few people in my town. You only ever had to remember the last 3 digits of a phone number. You just had, because they all start with 2482. Sorry for a drink. And because in my case, I was so preoccupied with whatever the latest illness that I had at the time, I was always a bit late to even be interested in boys. So much so that actually I was accused of being a lesbian at one point because I just wasn't there emotionally because I was too busy dealing with what I already had. I'm not. I have 2 children. Not the. Right. So this is pretty much what it was like in school. When I say I had no friends, I really mean that. I spent a lot of time by myself, which is because I was the weird kid. And to be honest with you, trying to explain this to other people when you're looking at relationships, when you meet a cute boy, explaining why you can't go to a pub crawl or something and why you carry around so much medication, that is, what it was a very hard thing to explain. And, why you couldn't go on a pub crawl when, you had to get a treatment or something of that nature. So as a very young person, the only thing that I actually knew well was computers. I am older than Google, but the thing was, when I was sick, that the one thing I could escape to was the online world. Hallelujah. Finally, a world in which I was equal to everybody else, because computers don't care if you have a fever of 102. I could always lay in bed and I could always work on computers. And actually, a family member gave me my first computer and said to me, the computers will always be able to do what you can't do. Now with AI, that seems to be quite especially true. But so I started out in a career in technology because any attempt I made at working with the general public, even on IVIG, that went, quite truthfully, awful. The hard part was let's talk about the employment world. So for me, imagine having to start out every potential job with every interview. It was less worried about what skills and experience I had in order to be able to do the job. But how do you start off a conversation with any prospective employer and tell them you need 10 days off, full days, because you have to. So in my case, I'm in a form of IVIG. It's called Gemgard. One of them is SD, but anyway, comes in little tiny bottles, and it takes 10 hours because each bottle has to be reconstituted. Because I'm allergic to 3 different kinds at this point, last year, Health Canada actually, one of the products that I was on, they stopped carrying it in Canada. So the only option for me, which was the only IVIG that I would have not had an anaphylactic reaction to, is one that takes all day. So looking at any perspective, if I were to work in a normal job, I have to start out in my interview and disclose I need 10 business days off a year because it starts at 7 a.m. and that's to get out before 5. So it certainly made the professional world quite difficult. So basically, I decided to start traveling a bit with my work. So I had the very, very great luxury early in my career to actually work out of the UK. Now I work from home. I was actually in the original Zoom beta, but back in those times it was Skype. And what travel taught me was to not be afraid about my disease, because so much of, and everyone, we all have our own different views, and definitely became obvious during the pandemic that when I traveled, it opened my eyes to realize that there's other people in the world with rare disease. I remember being in my 20s and I went to London and I met a woman for the first time that she was allergic to the sun. And I thought, wow, I can't even imagine that, what it would be like to go outside and physically be allergic to the sun. So traveling allowed me a world of being able to see, okay, there's other people like me, and maybe I'm not that weird. Because as when I participated in the 1 in 12 campaign, I realized there's a whole lot of people that are fighting their own battles of rare disease. But it finally ends on a happy note. So here's the thing. I met my husband actually about 10 years ago now. And we actually met at actually literally the day after I moved home back to Nova Scotia. And everything that I do is just a little bit different. That even though I have to be careful about getting sick and doing things, what I discovered is that when you have to walk a different line than other people, there's actually certain beauty in that. Because I couldn't work with other people, I focused on this online world and thought, okay, well, what can I do with what I have to work with? It's like when you're in the kitchen, if you take out some ingredients and you forgot something, and you sometimes can't run to the store, you make a substitution. And that's what I did. And I made the world my own unique world. I'm pleased to say that I do have 2 young children, Alex and Marilyn. They are 5 and 7. And part of the reason why I want to tell stories is because of what my life was like growing up. You did feel weird, and organizations like Community Canada exist, and I'm pleased to thank you guys for involving me in this, because sharing the story of growing up with it, it was always my normal, is to have to be a zebra. All right, so I want to talk about access for a second. Now, I know there's a lot of words on here, so I want to talk about is pharmacare in Nova Scotia. So unrelated to PI, I also, as you know, many of you probably that do have PI. How many people in this room actually have PI? Yes. Okay. All right. So it's very, very common with a person with PI to have secondary autoimmune. I also have celiac disease, and I'm on a biologic called Tezspire for my lungs. Because I am self-employed, I do not have drug coverage. And my husband works, he's in industrial engineering, works with me as well. So let's talk about my drug spend. In 2023, I spent actually a year, for those of you who were in Ottawa, I had just gotten over my last round of COVID at that time. And the year that followed, I went downhill to the point that I actually had an oxygen concentrator, because even with 100 milligrams of prednisone, every single day for 6 months. My asthma could not be controlled. I paid 7 ambulance bills, and I was finally considered for the drug Tezspire, which was just approved in December of that year in the province of Nova Scotia. I don't know if it was national, but either way, it was only available to me then. So I was one of the first people in this province to be on it. Problem with it comes with a very hefty price tag, $21.45 a month. And that's every 28 days. And I don't have any form of secondary. My husband in that same year came down with rheumatoid arthritis. Humira. Hadlima is the actual biological similar. We don't have drug coverage. So here's the thing. How it works for pharmacare in the province of Nova Scotia. If you join the program, as I did in January in 2023, what they do is they assess you a copay. So you have to pay this copay. And so if you spend $1,000 on the drug, only 80% of your drug goes towards your copay. Now here's the kicker. If you're on a medication, so let's take, I have skin issues as well, and one of my drugs for that's $400. Because pharmacare doesn't actually cover that drug no matter what, that doesn't go towards my copay. So only the only drug I'm on that was approved with a special exemption from pharmacare is the only thing that comes off my copay. And also, because my husband elected to go on Hadlima without trying months and months of methotrexate, because 4 of his other family members with RA and Crohn's had life-threatening reactions to it. So we didn't want to go down that road after it took a year for him to get Humira. So the only thing that's eligible here is my Tezspire, but our actual drug spend is this. So what they do is, even if you join in January, it doesn't matter, based on our combined gross income, which they declared was $80,000, they assess us a copay of $8,500. But when I joined in January, I had to pay that full $8,500 before it reset April 30th. I got real close, but didn't make it last year. But here's the thing. To make that, I would have had to have spent 79% of my available gross income on medication before receiving a benefit. Why is it not prorated? Let's talk about access. This was prohibitive to a lot of people. I had to get a second job. I carry a second job just to pay for my medication. But despite that, and working 100 hours a week for the entire last year to pay for my drug medications, I do have some balance. I'm able now, at least because I am doing much healthier, albeit slave to drug costs, I am able to balance, life as a mother, an entrepreneur, with my family. And all of that makes me see the world just a little bit differently. And I really encourage anyone with PI, use your strengths to work with what you have. And as always, if someone says to you, why are you so weird? Because that has happened to me. Ask them why they are so boring. Thank you. Anybody have questions? Yes, it is. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Questions? Anyone online?
We're just asking if there's any questions.
Okay. Well, it is. I mean, if you do the math on that, but what I don't understand now, the steps I've gone to, I've actually been working with my MLA to potentially put something, because it's only Nova Scotia. So in BC, they actually have an exemption rule that you can see. What they should, in my opinion, look at is what is the percentage of your drug spend of your income, and why on earth did you have to pay? If you look at, like, they knew going into this what I was going to be paying, because I got the exemption at the same time as my enrollment. So and so in other provinces, it's just not Nova Scotia has the ability that you can apply for an exemption. My MLA has actually even contacted Pharmacare. I was not given any form of exemption whatsoever. They said that they can assess your income again, still going to be the same thing, and I would still get the same copay. Yep. Yep. Had to try it. Yep. Yep. 100%. That is provincial. Yeah. And the drug company has even reached out to PharmaCare as well. Same thing with my drug company. My MLA's reached out to PharmaCare in my particular case. And in my case, I was basically unable to work. I was on home oxygen, taking 100 milligrams of prednisone a day. And this is my only option. And to get a kicker, well, it's not my only option. I did qualify, I would have qualified for Fasenra, which would be paid for by the province of Nova Scotia. But let me tell you about what happened there. It was during the pandemic, and the drug test or the blood test that I required a 0.4 eosinophil cell count. Had to be within 6 months. Mine was a 1. But the drug test wasn't, or the blood test wasn't read by the receptionist. I was late by 2 days. 2 days. And then because I started other medication, I never got the eosinophil count. Could have saved myself all over $20,000 a year, but over 2 days, and they would not grant me an exemption. And Fasenra will be paid for by the province of Nova Scotia if you meet those qualifications. So that was my only option. So yeah, we need exemptions for cases like that. If you can prove that you had the test in a period of time, I mean, nobody should be on that much prednisone for that long, ever. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There is, yeah, no, that's true. So AstraZeneca would be the one of mine. And they did give me several bridging doses at periods when I couldn't afford it. That has happened for sure. We did apply for a permanent reduction through AstraZeneca when we were denied. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's me. I've been doing it. I'm getting nowhere, but I've been doing it for 6 months now. Yep. That was, I had to, yeah, I'd love to meet her. I would love to meet her. I think one of the only ones that got Tezspire approved, and it was because of the sheer amount of hospitalizations that I had. But the worst part was Fasenra is what I should be on, and I wouldn't actually have to pay anything. Yeah. Oh yeah, but I mean, even yeah, I call PharmaCare at least once a month. I'm getting nowhere, but like,
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
No, no. Yeah, so I know Whitney recently is getting involved in some research around access to biologics, and we also offer some it's a very small amount of financial assistance to patients and families that need it. And I think what Community Canada can do is we do a lot of work, like in getting newborn screening in British Columbia. There was a lot of work with patients and supporting them right into their MLAs. And so whatever we can do to sort of support you with your battle,
yeah,
I think that this needs to be
it's the biggest thing I want to just advocate for in the whole theme of access is looking at getting some. I'd love to actually sit down and meet someone from pharmacare and show them that and say, tell me, make this make sense. And because it doesn't get any more black and white than that. So I'm currently actually my children, I've been, the other thing about access, like you're saying with the newborn screening, my children have been sitting on a referral for 10 months to get tested. That like we had to get a secondary referral to the same to the IWK. They have the referral, but we still don't have an appointment. So access to medications and for testing for families of PI should be, in my opinion, easier. Okay. It's I'll offline I can share because okay, it's already been sent in and it's confirmed that it's been received by the IWK. Yeah, but we still just don't have an appointment. No one's called us. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Alex and Marilyn are my children. So.
Any other questions from the audience? And like, oh yeah, Elizabeth.
Yeah, just hearing all of this makes me think of my own experience in trying to advocate for myself when I'm not feeling great is really hard. And so appreciate what you've been through is
thank you.
Horror story of trying to get what you need to.
And the worst part is just when you're finally like standing up here and being able to ask for you. I own my own tech company, and I've been able to provide for. At one point, I was the only person working in my whole family, supporting a family of 4, and 2 people taking biologics, and I have 2 young children. Both just make my life more expensive. My son and I both have celiac disease, so they say about getting people working, and if I didn't have this medication, I would be on welfare. So, and that is the difference these drugs make to people.
So just to finish, I wondered about, is there a branch of Community Canada that can be set up to have resource to add, like people to advocate, like the legal system, the medical system, that, it's like building an arsenal of advocates.
Yeah.
So that the patient is liberated.
Definitely love to open up a dialogue with pharmacare and the government about this, because you can't like, and I've did some research, pretty local, been this battle of mine's been going on for a year now, about fighting about pharmacare coverage. And the thing is, I'm not going to give up, because quite frankly, I'm tired of working 2 jobs. But the reality of it is that you can't get a hold of anyone. And so the legislature resumes in fall, hoping that, that's going to take some time too, but you got to fight somehow.
Awesome. Thank you so much.